I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the new Mercedes-AMG GLE 53 Coupe. Long name, but good car, as we'll find out when we take this new large SUV out onto the road. Now, the GLE wagon's been on sale for about a year in Australia. The new Coupe has just arrived in second generation form, and the 53 is the one you're gonna want. Not only is it great to drive, but it's also the most interesting. You can get the 63 with the loud twin turbo V8, which is cool, but the 53 is just fascinating. We have a 3-litre inline 6 under the bonnet, but a whole host of 48-volt technology, which makes it faster, cleaner, and powers a whole bunch of auxiliary systems like active sway bars. And as we'll find out when we do take this out onto the road, they make a huge difference to how this large SUV is able to handle. Now, the 53 sits in the middle of a range of 3 GLE coupes here in Australia. There's a Mercedes-Benz version, the 450, which runs the 3-litre inline 6, but it doesn't get the 48-volt compressor that acts like a second turbo. We've got the 53 that we're in, and then 50 grand more than this gets you into the GLE 63 with the V8. But none of them feel like a pauper inside. The interior is lovely. And this is the important point. I feel like Mercedes-Benz are coming back to a new peak in terms of interior quality. I haven't been the biggest fan of their interiors in the previous generation, but these ones are better, both in terms of materials and in terms of build quality. Everything feels screwed together really nicely, and I'm really happy to report that. The design is definitely not understated. It's quite out there, and you'll either love it or you'll hate it, and you can let me know down below the video. But I, for one, am quite into it. This car's conservatively spec'd. We've got a dark leather, we've got black open pore wood, but it works. You can get brighter colors if you want. Speaking of the seats, they're very comfortable, but they're also quite large. You know, I sort of float around in the center of them. If you do have a bigger frame, you'll find them really perfect, but I think that it would have been great if they had active adjustable bolsters just to keep you in place in the corners, particularly given how strong the handling of this car is. But they're very supple, nice mix of leather and Alcantara. They're very presentable. I've mentioned the wood. We also have nice real metal accents as well. And we have this steering wheel, this gorgeous stitched leather hub in the center. It looks really special. There are a lot of controls relating to both driving dynamics and the interior tech. Speaking of that tech, we have the biggest screens you can currently get in a Mercedes-Benz until that new S-Class comes out. Twin 12.3-inch screens for the MBUX or MBUX infotainment system. We only have wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but that's largely because the system itself is so sophisticated that Mercedes-Benz haven't decided to go to wireless CarPlay yet, and you can let me know whether you think that's a good or a bad decision. But the tech is very presentable looking, and you do learn to use it. We have these trackpads on the wheel, we have another trackpad between the seats, and this screen is a touchscreen, so it's kind of like choose your own adventure. We have these prominent grab handles here. I really like those. We have lots of toggles for the various controls, climate, the air suspension system, the exhaust, the damping. So it's all quite tactile. And of course we have the seat controls up here on the door, along with heating and ventilation. Plus practicality is good. We have a deep box between the seats. We've got this shelf here with wireless phone charging and very, very large cup holders. You'll get a venti in that, no problem. And big door bins as well. So up front, I think it's pretty lush. Let's check out the second row. So this is the coupe version of the GLE. You can get a wagon body, and in the wagon you can get an optional third row. Here in the coupe, unsurprisingly, it's a 2-row proposition only. Legroom's good though, behind my own driving position. Headroom's also fine, despite the fact we have a pano sunroof in this car, and tow room is good, even though this seat is a pretty heavily bolstered sports seat. Now you could get someone in the middle, but you wouldn't want to because it's a real perch, not a lot of headroom in the middle. So instead, using it as a 4-seater is more comfortable. We've got 2 cup holders here in the center armrest. We've got air vents, we've got another USB-C port here, and big pockets and some nice stuff like the wood trim repeated here on the back of the seat, as well as some ambient lighting and the soft, high-quality materials continuing to the back. So probably not the most practical large SUV in the rear, but certainly perfectly usable if you do need to get a couple of adults back here from time to time. Moving around the back of the GLE Coupe, well, this is a look you'll either love or you'll hate as well, isn't it? Coupe SUVs aren't really my jam. I kind of prefer them where they have more defined lines, but the popularity of the shape clearly means that I'm wrong, I suppose. We have a power tailgate mechanism in the badge, which is pretty cool, revealing a larger boot than the first generation of this car. It's also got a lower lip, and that's finished in chrome, so it's easier to lift things into the boot. Now we have this quite substantial cargo cover here, which is a nice piece. And the boot goes back quite a way. We also have control for the air suspension here on the back, which can bring it down a further 50 mil when you're loading stuff into it. We've got a netted area off to the side, and underneath this boot floor, there is no spare. So keep that in mind if you're going to be doing really long distance country touring. So that's a look at the interior and the practicality of the GLE 53. Now it's time to jump in the driver's seat and take this AMG crossover out onto the road. So what's the GLE 53 like to drive? Well, so good that it'll have you doubting that you're in a large coupe SUV to start with. Basically, it feels like a lifted sedan, which I guess is kind of the point, because there's a lot of people that might have been C-Class or E-Class buyers that are really wooed by the shape and size of the GLE Coupe, and so they are buying this instead. So it's good that effectively Mercedes-Benz have been able to make this handle like a low-slung car, even though you are sitting so high. Now, it's tough to do that. It's especially tough on tires because there's no avoiding that this is a big car and it is a heavy car. And that's why we need 315 width tires on this thing to make it go around corners like an E53 might. And so your tire bills are going to be big if you intend to drive this thing athletically a lot. So do keep that in mind. I am an advocate for only buying as much car as you need. And for a lot of people, the E53 will be enough, particularly given that this is only a 5-seater anyway. But if you don't want an E53, if you want a GLE, this is the one to get. I love the powertrain in the 53. This is the future of performance petrol engines, I've got no doubt. So yes, it is downsized compared to a V8. We've got a 3-litre inline 6 here. You can get the GLE 63 with the 4-litre V8, and that's fine. It's not a matter of skimping or compromising on the outputs though. It's just a very different engine. I mean, for starters, it sounds like an inline 6. Oh, straight 6s just have that brilliant, smooth note to them, and that's exactly what we've got here. It is like kind of an old-fashioned AMG in a lot of ways, where it's a bit more of a Q car. We don't have to have too much sort of flaring on the arches outside or even a ridiculous wheel size. We only have 21-inch wheels here, which, you know, you can see there's actually a bit of sidewall on this car. It's so big. And similarly, the engine isn't overpoweringly loud. Like, it isn't just loud for loud's sake. Instead, we have a really nice engine note. It's refined, it's only as loud as it needs to be, but it's properly rapid. This is a powerful engine, same engine as you get in the Mercedes-Benz GLE 450 as opposed to the AMG, but the AMG adds a whole bunch of extra 48-volt stuff. So in addition to the single conventional turbo that the GLE 53's engine uses, we have a 48-volt compressor that more or less acts like a fairly instantaneous second turbo. It can spool up almost immediately and produce 250 Newton meters, so it really fills in that gap when you're trying to take off quickly, and it really works. This is a pretty fast SUV. It doesn't have the same brute force as the V8, but it's not far off, but it's a lot more economical than the V8. In fact, on a spirited cross-country run, and I mean spirited, I used only 13 litres per 100 kilometres in the GLE 53, which I think for a huge behemoth like this is pretty astounding and pretty impressive. Now, the torque gets channeled to all 4 wheels through a 9-speed torque converter auto. It's really smooth and intuitive and stays out of the way, basically, and I didn't feel the need to paddle shift it because in Sport Plus mode, it is so intuitive. Now, usually I stay well away from Sport Plus modes because they involve going to a suspension that is simply too harsh, but the GLE 53 is not like a 63 in that way. Even on Sport Plus, the suspension and the ride quality is still acceptable. Plus, you start getting the 48-volt active anti-roll bars coming into play, effectively keeping the body dead flat in the corners. Now, as I said, that is quite hard on tires, but you do get this amazing coupe-like effect where you don't have the body rolling about like a large SUV normally would. It's something that works really well when you're aiming to drive this very sportily. And you don't have to compromise that much on comfort as you do it. And then once you're done, you just put this drive mode selector back in comfort mode and everything becomes totally serene yet again. It's not particularly loud despite the width of the contact patch, which is good. Visibility out, it's okay forward and to the side, but back through that narrow aperture window is kind of hard. But we do have a lot of safety tech looking out for us. We've got very strong active lane keep assist, which really does try its very best to keep you in the lane. We've got adaptive cruise, we have automated lane changing, so you just use the indicator and the whole car moves you into another lane autonomously. 360-degree camera, front and rear cross traffic alert, high speed AEB, it's all there, and the 360-degree camera is particularly good. So that's a detailed look at the new AMG GLE 53 Coupe. Really great powertrain in this vehicle. I reckon it's the future of performance petrol engines, and it's a pretty rosy future because it sounds good, it's fast, and it uses a lot less fuel than the V8 in the real world. Also really good handling thanks to that 48-volt system, a good new interior. You know, the whole thing feels like a luxurious package. For me, I'd go the GLE wagon for a bit of extra practicality, or the E53 if you don't really need the shape and size of an SUV. But you can let me know what you think about the GLE 53 down below the video. While you're there, make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.